You said you see God in all of creation, and one of God's greatest gifts to us is our imaginations.
God's imagination, of course, in my mind, is limitless. There are realities about getting older that we have to face. The body creaks a little bit more, the joints take a little bit more to oil up in the morning, but the imagination can just go on expanding forever. That means that no matter our age, there's always significant possibilities. I think as we're older, there is a responsibility that we have to leave the world better than when we found. Gratitude is the foundation of joy and whatever happiness that we can find. And gratitude begins with not taking anything for granted. The antidote to losing a dream is to find a new dream. The creative spirit expires only when you expire.
Stories stir the soul.
Stories reveal.
And stories heal.
In this podcast, we will give you an inside look at someone who's had a life-changing breakthrough.
Real people, real stories with real breakthroughs. As a health and wellness expert and coach, and Todd as a men's mentor,
we've seen firsthand what God can do when it comes to a breakthrough. So lean in, listen well. This could be your biggest breakthrough.
Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Your Biggest Breakthrough. I'm your host, Wendy Pett.
I'm Todd Isberner.
And so, Todd,
Hello, Wendy.
What are your dreams, your passion, your vision, your purpose?
My goals?
Your goal?
All of that.
What is it? Give it to me.
I'm laughing because literally Wendy and I would do that every once in a while. We'd ask that question. And all I know is that
sometimes it can feel overwhelming.
And it's getting tougher as you get older to have those dreams, visions, goals, passions.
But is it? But is it?
Well, we're going to find out from our guest maybe something completely different. But
yeah,
I do know this. We're all facing opportunities that we don't realize are there because we're forgetting that we're still on mission because we're alive.
That's right. That's right. We are.
And with today's guest, David
McNally
has written a book. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But what we love about this interview is that you're going to really learn some pretty cool things, like how to find relevance, not just in your work, but in your real mission in life.
And you're going to learn to keep dreaming and to stay or get creative. Maybe you think, oh, I'm not very creative. Well, learn new things. Wrong. Yeah. You've got some creativity in you.
We're going to talk about what does it look like to have a life driven by purpose and not by circumstances.
Yeah. And if you've had some tough circumstances in your life, like we all have, you're going to learn that grief and gratitude can actually coexist.
Oh, beautiful. Mm-hmm. Well, David McNally is a best-selling author and Hall of Fame speaker. He's also the producer of the award-winning documentary, The Power of Purpose. He has spoken to thousands of audiences like all over the world.
Yes. And David believes that life is at its very best when we are contributing and creating. He has just released a new book, and it's called If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished. I mean, I love the title, and oh man, it's so good. But it's aimed at those who have reached the age of 60 plus. And so If You're Alive is an inspiring guide for discovering what's next. So get ready to learn what's next with our guest, David McNally. Well, welcome, David, to Your Biggest Breakthrough. We're so happy to have you.
Well, thank you. What a pleasure to be invited. This is wonderful.
Well, I met you, 20-something years ago, and I've stayed connected with you through your newsletters, and I'm always inspired by you, and I thought, we have to have David on the show. So, again, thank you for saying yes to the invite.
Yeah. You know, the topic today we're going to discuss is going to be tremendously relevant for everybody, and particularly if you are, I don't even know if I should use this term, David, because I don't want it to bring the wrong connotations. Even if you are a middle-aged to senior level citizen, we're going to talk about that. I was telling David before we started the recording here that I watched, there's a cool 7-minute video on YouTube. I'm trying to remember the name of that YouTube video, David. Do you recall?
Well, it's really, it's the one introducing me, I think. Introducing to, I have the new YouTube channel called The Inspired Elder. So it's a way of people getting to know who I am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's really, really well done. And that in itself is inspiring. So let's give our listeners a little feel for who you are. You've said that you've got a strong faith in God, and I think you were even an altar boy when you were growing up. But I love the fact that you said you see God in all of creation. And one of God's greatest gifts to us is our imaginations. So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a great fan of a theologian called John O'Donohue. I'm not too sure whether he is familiar to you. He's a magnificent writer and philosopher, has a best-selling book called Anam Cara. And he was a Catholic priest for 19 years. And so theologically, it's very sound in a lot of so many things. But one of the things what I loved about what he said was he said, obviously, in the discipline of being a priest, I understand the will of God. But he says, what fascinates me as I get older is the imagination of it. He said how God has created so much magnificence in this world and in the universe. God's imagination, of course, in my mind, is limitless, as is validated every day in whatever we see. But at the same time, I like to say, well, many of us say we are children of God, and we believe that. Well, if we do believe it, then we must have inherited some of this from God. Then
That's right.
That
Yes.
God has allowed us to use our imagination, and the imagination. So, for example, when we talk about getting older, there are realities about getting older that we have to face. The body creaks a little bit more, the joints take a little bit more to oil up in the morning, but the imagination can just go on expanding forever. And what that means is that no matter our age, there's always significant possibilities.
I love that because it's so true that we're made in the image of God. He is the great creator and incredible imagination. We see it visibly displayed all around us. But the fact that he's given us that gift, and for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you see behind David, there's like a shelving with all sorts of
paints and paintbrushes. Yeah, I love that.
And David, I'm thinking some people are thinking, well, I don't feel very creative. I'm not an artist. I'm not a painter. I'm not a musician. So just help them understand a little bit that you have an imagination that God has given you. Anyhow, it's just a matter of tapping into it.
We are all creative. If we think about it, we start creating from the moment we wake up in the morning. In other words, if we're married or in a relationship or whatever it might be, we start to create the tone and the feeling of that relationship from the first thing in the morning. So if we greet each other with love, if we greet each other with affection, if we do something lovely for one another, all of a sudden that relationship is being created into something quite magnificent and beautiful. As we go out, if we're still working, we create our careers in terms of how we interface with our colleagues at work, how do we interface with our clients and our customers. We're always creating. Now, to say, you see that, I'm glad you picked out that paint box at the back. I am the worst painter in the world. So that is not a reflection of my creativity. My creativity is in writing. My wife found this artist in Arizona, and this was his actual paint platform. And she said, I would like to buy that. Would you make it into a sculpture for me? And he said, okay. So it became a sculpture, which sits, of course, as you see behind me, right? But in terms of creation, people say, no, I don't think that way. Well, then you might say, do you dream? Yeah, I dream. Do you ever get creative in your dreaming? Oh, yeah, I have the most creative, creative dreams. So
that's good.
Creation is all around us all the time.
Yes.
And in fact, if we're not creating, in other words, if we're not moving towards something that we want to manifest in our lives, we are not very fulfilled. So we all need to have something to look forward to.
You know, you're absolutely right, David. When I actually just spoke to a friend not too long ago who said, I'm just really depressed and I've been this way for several months. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, what are you doing, these days? Are you creating? Are you moving your body? Are you, all these things? And the answer was no. I just have been in a funk. And so when we're not creating, it puts us in that funk, right? It really puts us in that place of not feeling like we're contributing, and we are to be contributors. And so anyway, I just love all that you're doing. And again, I've known you for years and I love your message, but I want to get people to really know who you are. And so I would love to kind of go back to early years and hear your story, hear where you grew up. I know from the video that we watched that you grew up in Europe, right? You grew up during war times. And so what was that like as a child, and how did that help shape you to who you are today?
Well, yes, I was born in London a year after the end of the Second World War. I have to say that these days because you get so old and the young people think the war was Vietnam or Afghanistan or something.
Right.
So,
that's right.
But
Right.
at the end of World War II, and I was born in a part of London where the bombing was the heaviest. So when I was a child, and 4 or 5, and I could go outside and play, my playground was the bombed out buildings because the rehabilitation took, years and years and years. So, but you never knew anything different, right? So you're a kid. I was always very fortunate to have loving parents. They didn't have much, but they were very loving. I never had a problem eating. I always had plenty of food. In fact, my dad was a cook, so we had a little cafe. In fact, I probably ate far too much if you looked at my childhood photos. But so that has to influence you. But the big influence was my parents, who, though poor, were ambitious. And when I was 9 years of age, they emigrated to Australia. And I had, so I'm 9, my brother's 18 months. And they went there, as all immigrants do, for a better life, wherever they go in the world. And so I grew up in Australia, and, I inherited their ambition in that we didn't have much when I was young. And so I decided that I wanted to be successful. And success meant, quite frankly, lots of good things, nice home, fancy cars, all of that. And I became an entrepreneur very young. And when I'd reached the age of 26, I was already quite successful. I already had a beautiful home and traveling the world and doing a lot of those things. But I say that not to boast, but you asked about background and experience, because I don't boast about it, because at 28, I was flat broke and heavily in debt. I can't remember setting that goal, but I achieved it, anyhow. So you
sure,
learn
it taught you a
from
lot.
that. Yeah. It was a very difficult, next 2 years was a very difficult time. But then I, came back and kept going. Yeah.
Wow.
So, David, you had quite a career, and you've written a number of books, and your most recent one is titled "If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished."
Amen. Yes.
A lot. That's a powerful title. Can you share, maybe was there any particular defining moment during your lifetime that sort of spawned this book into existence, and like maybe you realized this truth for yourself, like, wait a minute, mission on Earth is not yet finished?
Yes, very defining moment. I can give you a tremendously defining moment. So one of the first setbacks the first major setback I had in my life after my business failed was in 2003. My wife at that time, the mother of our 5 children, passed away from ovarian cancer. So she was 57, I was 56.
So young.
A few days after she passed away, I went back to Australia. My children here were old enough for me to leave them, right? And I went back to regroup, to spend a few weeks with, in the beautiful weather with my 2 brothers and my father. And then one morning, a few days after I was there, I was walking along the beach that my wife and I met, courted on, and that, and I was doing what the grief counselors tell you to do, and that is talk to your loved one, have a conversation, talk to them. The only thing they don't tell you is be ready for when they answer back.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-oh.
so I said to my wife, her name is Josephine, as I'm walking on the beach, people must have been looking at me saying, this guy, is a bit weird. And I said to her, I said, look, I know in our belief system that you're probably with your mother now, my mother, loved ones. I said, but, you went first. Why did you go first? Why not me? And she said, honestly, this is what came into my mind. So whatever you want to believe, she says, David, because you still have work to do.
Wow.
And
Powerful.
that stunned me, but it has informed my life ever since. So when I wake up in the morning, I say, oh, you're alive. You must still have work to do. You may not know what that work is, but it's about growing and evolving and learning, I think, to be a better human being in every way one can describe that, whether that's being more kind, more compassionate, more giving, whatever. But it's more work. So when the book title, If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth isn't finished, actually came from another book and a question in that book about being alive and still having more work to do. And so that's how I see things right now.
So, I mean, a lot of people, this happened when you were 56, I think you said, and a lot of people, when they get into their 50s and 60s, they really think they're headed for the finish line, whatever they perceive the finish line to be. And I think most people perceive that to be retirement. I hit that certain age.
Golfing all day.
I've done all my work. Now I get to just sit around and relax. So what do you have to say to those who are sort of stuck in that place of looking for that finish line and then believing I hit that and then I don't have to work anymore and I get to just relax?
Coast.
Well, I think all the data proves that retirement, as seen in the advertisements that you see about the cruising and the cocktails and all that, it's an illusion because there's that distinction between having fun and being fulfilled. So there's not. I love playing golf. I mean, that's my favorite sport. I love it, but I'm never going to qualify for the PGA Tour, so I got to find something else to do as well. So I think what happens is you go through that period, and people do it. They go through I'm free, I relax, and then 6 months later they're saying, oh my gosh, oh wow, I need more than
is this all there is?
This isn't fulfilling. And what comes out is two things that I think are critical. Is that when we're working, we clearly know that we're relevant. And we're relevant because people are sending us emails, they're texting us, we're in meetings. So there's a lot of relevance there. But when we retire, that relevance is not felt anymore because the relevance was fed to you from the outside. So when you get into that next phase of your life, you have to find the relevance from within. And that means reflecting and thinking about my life and looking at, when people look at me, like when I become, for example, an ancestor, like the show Finding Your Roots, when you look at you are an ancestor, what would you have left behind for others to build upon? And I think as we're older and we are, as I say, we are elders, there is a responsibility that we have to leave the world better than when we found it. I think that's a
Amen. It's a legacy.
responsibility. It's a role and responsibility. And I feel very, very strongly about that. I don't want to be preachy about it, but I really feel that that's a critical thing for us to understand, that we must find ways to contribute. Now, there's
Yes.
many different ways. We don't have to do big things, but there are so many needs in the world, so many opportunities for us to contribute. We have to find ways that suit our needs and we find fulfilling.
That's so good, David, because so many people, they find their identity in what they do instead of who they are and how they're contributing. And so it's a shift in mindset and understanding, going within and really knowing who you are. So I love that. And making a life of contribution. Well, in one of your YouTube, in that same YouTube video, you talked about being in Tanzania, I believe, and the experience that you had there and what you noticed with the elders and the young, with the tribe. And so I just kind of want to maybe unpack that and how you felt like this is a great model, so to speak, of how to contribute and to honor our elders and all those things. Can you share about that experience just a little bit?
It was a very profound experience because went to Tanzania with 9 other men. It wasn't intentionally meant to all be men, but it just there that only men signed up. We've got to be careful though. We weren't excluding women, Wendy. You know.
I got you.
But it happened to be 10 men, and it was a self-discovery track. So every one of us, from 60 to 70, were at stages in our lives where we had been, fairly successful, but we were asking the question, "What's next?" And so this wasn't a glamorous safari. This was a backpacking journey, which involved lots of hiking, campfires, but beautiful conversations around the campfire. And
Love
our
that.
guides were the Maasai Tribe. And I was not anticipating this, but it became very, very clear that when we formed around the campfire at night for our conversation, the older warriors would sit with us so that we would all be together. And then the young warriors would surround us in a symbolism of protection. But at the same time, whereas the older warriors would participate in the conversation, the younger warriors were silent. But their purpose was to absorb the wisdom of, I'm getting emotional about it because the memory of it is now so powerful, but was to absorb the wisdom of the elders. And I felt that was so incredibly powerful because elders, older people, have so much wisdom. And to be able to pass on to help the younger people not only be successful, but avoid making those mistakes. Now, you're not going to do it all the time. They don't want to listen sometimes. However, that doesn't mean that when they do want it, that you're not accessible to that. So I found that very powerful.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
And that
we're missing that here in this country quite a bit.
We've had those kind of models here. Because I love what you say about this being a personal responsibility to be able to give back. And I think that can be a missing link for a lot of people who just feel like, I really don't have anything to offer. I run down the road here nearby and I have coffee at a shop where it's located near a few senior citizen apartment buildings. And so the place is packed with seniors. And many of them are alone. They're not in little groups talking, and they're not young people, that they're giving advice to. And I just sort of feel that there are people that stuck inside is this wealth of wisdom. Can you help us understand, how do you tap into that? And especially if you're someone who you don't feel very connected, I feel like I'm kind of alone. I'm living alone in the senior high rise. And what do I have to offer? And how in the world do I put myself out there? Is there anything practical they can begin to do?
It's a very timely question. And the reason I say it's timely because tomorrow I am keynoting a conference of 1,000 leaders who are in the retirement home community, right? So
Wow.
it's a good question asked at the right time. And the reality that this organization faces is that they do have all of these people living in their facilities, both independent living and assisted living, who they have discovered have so much to offer. Uh, so they have taken the initiative to begin something they call, purposeful living, to create programs and connections for their residents to be able to participate in things that they find meaningful. The reality of life, even when you're younger, is that some people have a lot of initiative and others don't. So sometimes those who lack the initiative really want to participate, but they don't know how to get started. So you need that leadership to be able to say, okay, this is what we're now going to do. We're going to create a life enrichment program to be able to bring these people together. And I happened to interview, as a part of my research before my presentation, 5 people from both assisted living and independent living. And what I discovered was, as we've just been talking about, they were remarkable. I mean, their backgrounds, their histories, and I don't know whether I was lucked out, but their attitudes were, even those who were in wheelchairs, their attitudes were, they were involved in writing and doing things they'd never done before, and discovering new talents that they had and gifts that they had. And that is the great gift about getting older, is to let go of the historical things that held you back, right?
Good.
And so if someone says, I'm not a writer, I say, have you ever tried it? No, I just know I'm not. I say, well, you just may have more talent than you think, and I get them started on the writing part, and then they get amazed at what they can do.
Oh, David, that's just so beautiful. I love hearing this. I love that you're going to speak to these leaders, and hopefully they will be able to equip their the people that are in their facilities with this purpose-driven kind of community. And
I just want to add into that, because many of our listeners have aging parents.
Well, I was going to.
That's where you're going. Okay, you go. Okay.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah, so we got to help them.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask, because not everyone is in that senior age group yet, but they have a parent that doesn't know where to go or where they fit in, or they don't know how to speak life into them, maybe. What would you suggest, or how would you encourage maybe, someone in the younger generation to assist with an elder in their life? What would you tell them to do?
I think I would suggest that what I think is so important in our lives right now is that the whole notion of acceptance, and meaning, number one, we don't make the parent wrong because they don't have, currently at least, the motivation to do something. And we have to also accept that they may never have it and may resist what you're endeavoring to do. You have their best interests. You want mom to have a better life or be more fulfilled in life, but they're not. But sometimes, and I've spoken to people with, about their parents, and they've just said, mom just won't move. And the more I push, the more she resists. So that's one element. The other side of it, however, is when the older person just doesn't know what is available out there. And there is so much happening now in the generation of the baby boomer and older that is available to them. So many things that they can participate, so many enrichment programs that they can check out in their community or their church. Again, I spoke at a church, a Lutheran church, a week ago, and they have a whole program called Purposeful Retirement.
That's so good.
And the church is catering to the needs of its congregation. And of course, as we know in churches, a lot of the congregations are older today, right? They're the faithful. Right. And so we need to provide them with what is relevant to them.
Yeah. And so often the elders feel left behind, left out, something, especially with all the technology and the way things have evolved so quickly, that it just feels like, whoa, I don't even know where I can tap in here and figure out even how to get my medical records or whatever. So there needs to be that assistance. But anyway, it's good.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about how there are a lot of people who are feeling stuck right now as they're aging and struggling with these feelings of being sort of disconnected.
Is it more here? Your mind?
Yeah, I think it's in their mind for sure, but then there's that loneliness factor too, where they're just not connected. And so I was so encouraged to see, David, you have a website called The Inspired Elder, and you have a real desire and passion to motivate and inspire and provide resources and get people connected. Talk a little bit more about The Inspired Elder.
The Inspired Elder is a companion to the book. So the book, If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished. That book is hopefully will be very helpful to people in answering a lot of the questions that we've been talking about, right? How to find purpose, how to find what I want to create in my life in the future. But like any learning, and I come out of that leadership development learning industry, it needs to be reinforced. There's a reason we go to church every Sunday, isn't there? We've heard the gospel a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we go, oh, I'm hearing it a little differently this week than I heard.
Yeah, that message was just for me this week. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's good.
So the Inspired Elder is actually a YouTube channel. It is obviously featured on my website. But it's a YouTube channel where once a week, and we've just launched it, so it's brand new over the last, I think we're putting up our 4th episode this week. But it's about a 3-minute message that says to you, hey, it's about appreciating your life. It's about yearning for purpose. It's about this week's going to be rich relationships, rich life, about how the power of relationships affects the quality of your life. So that's what the Inspired Elder. It's totally free, and so just subscribe and you'll be told every week when the new post comes out. Yeah, thanks for asking.
That.
Oh yeah,
you're offering hope, giving hope. That's good. Now, looking back at your own journey, David, and I'd like to touch on a couple more things that you've gone through in your life. But what role has gratitude played in shaping your purpose and contribution? And how can cultivating gratitude help our listeners live more fulfilled lives?
I believe gratitude is, as we grow older, is the foundation of joy and whatever happiness that we can find. And gratitude, I believe, begins with not taking anything for granted. Seriously, anything for granted. So it means looking around you and seeing things that you have around you that 100 years ago people never had. Wake up in the morning, turn the light on. Oh, they used to have to light a candle. I'm not being facetious here. I'm just saying it really is. I say, Monday night, I put out my garbage. The next day, I look in my garbage can, it's gone. I go, wow. But half of the world doesn't have, there's 4 billion people in the world who don't have people picking up garbage. I mean,
good point.
But you then go through everything, a full refrigerator or, the car that you drive or whatever it may be. If you go through and you say, oh my gosh, just to be full of gratitude for everything that you have. And I believe, but it starts with, I'm not going to take anything for granted. I'm not going to take my husband, my wife, my children, my friends. I'm going to value them all and appreciate them all. And one of the great ironies of gratitude is that so a year ago I lost my second wife to Alzheimer's, and we'd only been married 3 years. We got married really late in life before she was diagnosed. But the reason I'm suggesting that and telling you that is because the other wonderful thing I've learned is that grief and gratitude can coexist. So I can, even though I lost my wife and the grief of that has been very profound, that doesn't stop me being grateful for so much joy that's in my life, or the people that surround me, that support me. So it's an interesting irony there.
I love that you said that grief and gratitude can coexist, because I think so often people don't put those two together ever. And so they just stay in that grief state of mind, and it just gets so heavy that it's hard for them to trudge through life. And so when you have that gratitude, it lifts them up and gets them to carry forward and move forward, just like it has for you. Now, you've also gone through your own health battle. Is that correct?
Yeah, I back in 2010, I was diagnosed with a head and neck cancer, and that resulted in a major operation to take a big tumor out of my neck, and it's left me slightly disabled with my left arm. And people say, did it affect your golf swing?
I was going to ask you that.
And I like to say, no, it's as bad as ever. But but no, it was a very debilitating experience. They put me through 7 weeks of radiation and 3 chemo treatments. I started off at 195 pounds and finished up at 145 pounds.
Wow.
So I was emaciated and weak, and all of those things that cancer can do to you. However, here I am today. It's been a very slow growth, but fortunately, I feel very healthy today. But that taught me a great deal, especially around patience.
Yeah. Well, your mission here on Earth is not finished.
I was just going to say, you're still alive, and your mission is not yet finished. Sometimes when even when I say that phrase, I think some people feel like, well, what is my mission? Still trying to kind of figure that out. And I wonder, David, if we don't overcomplicate it sometimes by trying to make it too big or too far away from us, that it's something that I don't even know how to get near it. Can you talk more about just on a daily basis?
The simple purposes.
How do we fulfill this mission on a daily basis?
I think if we put mission and purpose and put them together as synonymous, right? They're both very similar things. My mission, my purpose, whatever that may be. We can overarch individual purpose with the fact of what we talked about a little earlier. When we leave this earth and move on, what have we left behind? That if we can start to think that way, and what is not just necessarily my legacy, but have I left shoulders? If we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, have I left shoulders that people can stand up and continue to move forward? So the bigger purpose is to leave the world better than when we arrived. And then the individual purpose is how we fulfill that and how we go about what we do every day, which comes back to contribution, right?
Right.
Finding ways to contribute. I had a perfect example of 2 friends the other day who are retired and been struggling with this whole notion and couldn't wait to how excited they were to tell me that they've just taken on the role of being substitute teachers in high school. And they were so
That's amazing.
excited about it. And I said, fabulous, because all of a sudden they had something not only to look forward to go to, but they felt they were contributing. That, you know,
Yes.
that they were helping these kids with their education. And there are a million things like that you can do. You know, friends feeding the homeless, you know, all of those very, very classic examples. I give you a very close one at home, is that one of my daughters, my artist daughter, my fourth child, third daughter, her was living in North Carolina, and she was in the eye of the storm of her life. She has been completely wiped out.
Oh, David,
she's lost
wow.
everything. She was about 2 weeks from opening her own art gallery. I'd done it all up, was magnificent. The whole building was washed away. And the challenge for her now is that she's lost her dream, but it's going to be years before that whole place is rebuilt. So now what does she do? So I allow her to have her grief. It's been extremely traumatic for her, but she's back here at the moment getting support and all of that. But what I do know about it is, like, I love Rabbi Harold Kushner, who wrote, you know, why do bad things happen to good people?
Good people.
He said, you know, when you lose a dream, the antidote to losing a dream is to find a new dream. And I absolutely love that. And I think that is very applicable to us. We've been very ambitious. We've had our careers. We've retired. Now we need to find a new dream. We need to have a new vision for our lives.
Right.
So, you know, again, going back to what we want to create, and the opportunities out there are abundant. I don't know whether you know my story of 5 or 6 years ago. What happened to me was
No.
So I was just about to turn 72. So it was in the May, and I have an exercise I have people do called the One Day I'm Gonna exercise.
And the one day I'm gonna. Okay.
Yeah, one day I'm gonna. You know, I'm growing up. One day I'm going to go to Australia. One day I'm going to do this. And I say, okay, you know, time's running out. I said to myself, okay, what's on your one day I'm going to list, David? And what I discovered was right at the top of the list was one day I'm going to go to college. I'd never been to college. In my,
Oh, my.
You know, I'd written 5 books, produced 3 movies, and I'd never been to college. And now I'd paid for a lot of college, but that wasn't my own college. And I found this magnificent program at the University of Minnesota here that was tailored for seniors, where you could get credit and go to school and do it at your own pace. And so in the fall of 2018, I became a freshman.
Oh, my goodness. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that, David. That's actually really inspiring.
It has been extraordinary. It has been just the most beautiful experience being in class with these young people. And people sometimes are concerned about young people, but if you sit in a classroom for long enough, you get very encouraged by their intelligence and their commitment and that. No, it's been, and I love being on campus and
I love this. Like, I'm so excited for you, David. That's so cool.
That's very inspiring.
And what are you learning? What are you studying? I'm just curious.
Anything I want, Wendy. Anything I want. That's what the counselor said. They said, what do you? I said, she said, anything you want, David. Don't worry about a major just yet. Just go and pick classes, you know. So I did some fabulous. In fact, the first class you'd be interested in, I did was the history of religion. That was my first class.
Fantastic.
Because I'd been very fascinated by, you know, and that was a wonderful class. Very, very involved in that. Yeah.
Oh, you are so inspiring.
You really are. What I love about you, David, is that you're living it out.
Yeah.
You're not just talking it out. You're not
doing
writing about it. You're actually doing it. And especially this example of going to college when you're in your 70s is a great model for us. It helps encourage us when we're starting to feel like, man, I think the best years of life are behind me. And why not shift and say, well, no, maybe the best years of my life are yet ahead of me. I still have purpose. I have meaning. I'm still alive. God can use me, and I'm starting to enjoy giving back. And everybody's got something to give back.
Yeah.
You are a classic example of that.
Truly.
We so appreciate your work and the way you're living it out and you're modeling for the rest of us.
Yes. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, David. And as we close up this interview, I hate to because we could talk forever. This is just so fun. Is there any kind of last encouraging words or something you'd like to share as we wrap up this interview?
I'd like to leverage on what you just said there. It's like that we need to say, how can I make my next years some of my best years?
Yes.
And the possibilities for that are endless. We can absolutely, the creative spirit expires only when you expire. That's what I'd like to leave you with.
I love that. The creative spirit only expires when you do. Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you so much, David, for being on Your Biggest Breakthrough. And those of you that are listening, please go to davidmcnally.com and learn more. Get his book, If You're Alive, Your Mission on Earth Isn't Finished. Get it for yourself. Get it for a loved one. And be encouraged. You've got more work to do here. So God bless you, David. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with us.
Too.
Take care.
Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we love spending time with you right here on Your Biggest Breakthrough podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. But until then, just head on over to yourbiggestbreakthrough.com where you'll find some free resources and information and a place where you can comment, and we would love to dialogue with you there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.